good, Brian?
Yeah, we're good.
Premier, today the organ donation bill made it through law amendments, goes back to the House. And one of the things that strikes me about that bill is it, like several others that your government has introduced, coastal protection, biodiversity, the new Traffic Safety Act last year, there's not a lot of meat in the bill itself. We get told that the bones are essentially in the regulations that are to be developed. And I wonder, do you have any concerns about passing legislation that way when perhaps it limits what you can actually debate and what members are actually knowing that they're voting for?
No, the bill is actually really about presumed consent. And the next piece of that is really associated with ensuring providing supports to allow us to move to presumed consent. We wanted to make sure to get the results that we had, it was less about the legislative piece and it is more about the structural importance of making sure that we provide the training and support out in community. So the bulk of this issue that we're raising is really the piece that we're debating is the presumed consent piece, which is in the bill. But I've said many times, in order for this bill to have great success, in order for it to actually continue to increase the number of donations, it will be the mechanical piece, which is not in regulation. It is about ensuring that we're providing the appropriate training for healthcare providers in rural communities, making sure that we continue to educate our citizens about that before we enact the law.
More generally, though, not just with this bill, do you have any concerns that the substance of debate is limited in the House when much of a bill, not just organ donation but others, rests in what will come in regulations, which won't come until after members have a chance to vote on the actual bill?
Well, it depends. I can't speak individually. I can speak to the bill that I've introduced, but in general, I get what you're saying. There are portions of bills that we introduce, and then there's another component in terms of public consultation and support from experts within the field to ensure that the implementation is what is required and how we do that, and particularly around coastal protection, for example. How do we continue to vote and engage those who have erosion support and all of that kind of stuff that allows you to make sure that the regulations are in place. That particular bill, we also have to deal with municipalities who have plan use bylaws. How do we conform all of that? That's so that part of that would have to work after the bill comes in. But I understand it's one of the issues that people have always had concerns, is particularly depending on are you changing the spirit of what people are voting on in regulation? And I don't believe that's the case in these bills. I believe what it is, it provides us with the opportunity to actually vote into further engagement by the experts to make sure that what we were talking about and what we had in our bill, how do we best then implement it.
Whether you're changing sort of the substance of it or not, wouldn't the public be able to see more about what the government is doing if some of those details were protected? For instance, coastal protection, they don't really know how much land near the coast is going to fall under this bill?
No, but we put in place, so that particular bill, for example, is an all-encompassing provincial one, but we also now have to go back and deal with municipalities around land, which is a bit different in all of our municipalities. So part of that is now, with the overall umbrella piece, now we got to pull together the municipalities as part of this, our partners, because in order for that to work properly, it will be them. And at that time, we will engage our communities as well.
What are you going to call a by-election?
I believe the one in Sackville we call by the 15th or 16th of May. I think the date is our nomination is set for this weekend. And we'll call it between then and the 15th or 16th of May.
Right. Is there any particular reason why it's taken?
Well, the House is sitting, people are doing, we're going through the process. It's within line what I normally would call a by-election. As you know, there's a number of others potentially coming up. I thought some of them may be vacant by now. They haven't been, so I'll have to do them individually about those.
So there'll be another one or more later on?
It depends. I mean, if all the rumors we're hearing around the House, to be accurate, I know one of our colleagues has actually announced he's running for nomination. He has to obviously secure that nomination. At that point, they'd have to step down. And I'm hearing rumors of others, but then we would call those by-elections.
Sorry, who's the colleague?
Not on our side.
Oh, okay. I thought that was your side.
You go.
Okay, no, I just wondered, we're into extended hours. You're looking to sit till midnight. Why? What's the hurry?
That's a question for the House leader. I don't manage the House hours.
Right, but the direction comes from your office, Premier.
Yeah, that's a better question for the House leader. I don't agree with the premise of your question at all, John. I don't manage the House. If I'd been managing the House, we'd have been sitting a lot earlier yesterday. But I don't manage the House, so it's not mine. It's the House leaders.
But is there any hurry to get out of here?
Not for me.
Premier, one of the things raised during question period today, the anesthetist situation down in Yarmouth, and it's not unique to Yarmouth. I wonder, one idea that's been floated is this idea of accrediting family practice anesthetists in the province. Is that something that's been brought to your attention, or that you've heard from any jurisdictions asking for it?
No, we used to, there was actually, that was part of how we provided that. GPs would go and take extra training around anesthesiology and provide that. It was actually in the community that I lived in, it was part of that. And then codes of practice have changed from the organization, which allow for starting to prevent that. It's not a government decision, those are governing bodies who would make that change. The issue in Yarmouth is one my understanding is we have someone now who's going through the immigration process to come into Yarmouth. We know there are two other supports. But you know, that is it would require the governing bodies to actually allow that to take place.
When you find yourself in a situation, as the province often does, where resources are strapped and there are potential solutions, but they require this meeting of the minds, for lack of a better way of putting it, are there any mechanisms that government can pull to try to speed up the process, or are you really limited by the ability of all of these groups to, one, get together, and then two, try to agree on something before you can actually make a change?
Well, no, we require all the governing bodies. I mean, ultimately, if they don't agree with the change, it's very difficult. I mean, we require the governing bodies. As you know, the Atlantic Premier has talked about ensuring that we have the same accreditation standards inside the region. Pleased to say that we've received some support in the Atlantic region to make that happen. But we need to, but without the governing bodies, it's impossible to make that change. We would require them.
Premier, in response to a question by Barbara Adams, you rejected her suggestion that you had dismissed the concerns of the former members who had written, among others, yourself. How would you characterize the way you have responded to this, if not dismiss it?
The issue was brought to my attention, which was on a Monday night. I was CC'd on a document that went to the Speaker of the House. I took the issue seriously. I went through all the correspondence within my office of Premier, and looking for both of the names that were attached to them, as well as the interim leader at the time, and the Premier who would have been in charge under one of those. Found none. Went back as far as my constituency office. Didn't have any. I also said that the part of that document that saying that I knew was inaccurate. I did not. So that's not dismissing. That was I went to investigate that. I continued to make sure that I hadn't missed something, the documentation or whatever had come in at this particular time. None was found, and proceeded forward.
But there continues to be a discrepancy between what you're saying and what they're saying. How are Nova Scotians to judge?
Well, Nova Scotians, I continue to go by my practice as the Premier of the province. I mean, they can either judge, they'll all judge us based on our record. I continue to demonstrate gender equality when it comes to ensuring that our daughters and wives and mothers are reflected in the appointments that I make. I continue to make sure that our government is the only government in history to continue to invest in sexual violence. We've had a strategy that we've invested in time after time. We just announced investments in transition houses where predominantly women and children are leaving violent situations. We continue to support our effort. And I took the issue that was brought to me seriously, and I investigated.
So last question. With the organ and tissue donation bill, will homosexuals be treated in the same exact way?
In what sense?
So are they going to be included in this? Are they?
All of the people that would traditionally fall into the organ donation, which would be all of us, there's a presumed consent, and then if there's any issue, would be the medical society that would determine. It wouldn't be the government to determine that if there were issues. For example, if you were a cancer patient and going through treatment of certain organs, you can't be a donor. That is based on medical evidence-based stuff that would be not brought forward by government. That would be supported by the medical community.
So would the organs and tissue of a homosexual person be treated the same way as a heterosexual person?
It would be my understanding. If you're asking me, I would say yes. But what the medical society would say, if there was any medical reason why not, it wouldn't. I'm not saying for you or me or anyone else. Those would be all part of that. It has nothing to do with the bill that we brought forward as presumed consent. It would be for medical issues. If someone said that the organs of an individual Nova Scotian were not to be used.
I believe that in Alberta, the tissues of homosexual people can't be donated, but it's not allowed, it's not permitted. Are you aware of that, and will that be the case?
It won't. We won't follow Alberta on a number of things, and I can tell you this bill will be all-encompassing. The only reason someone who wants to donate won't be able to would be for medical reasons that will be determined by medical people, not elected politicians.
Are you concerned that homosexuals might be discriminated at all?
Not by our bill, because our bill encompasses all Nova Scotians.
Okay.
It will be a medical society if there's any issues, and as I said to you, if your loved one is suffering from cancer, it creates a problem in terms of organ donation or other issues that for medical treatments that we may have received or other support. So there is, but I can tell you, presumed consent will include all Nova Scotians.
So do you think homosexual men should be able to donate blood?
I believe all Nova Scotians who want to be able to provide support to their fellow citizens should be able to do so. If there's a medical reason that they shouldn't, the medical society will determine that, not elected politicians.
Thank you, Premier.